Humanity is physically bound to the Earth, but the Earth is a ticking clock. From asteroid impacts to completely natural geological shifts, the history of our planet is written in mass extinction events. To ensure our permanent survival, we cannot remain a single planet species. We must forcefully climb out of the crushing gravity well of our home world and physically spread our biology across the cold, violent vacuum of the cosmos. This will not happen in a single miraculous leap. It will be a relentless, grueling, and heavily industrialized march across the dark. Today, we are mapping the exact timeline of human expansion, detailing the 15 colossal physical stages required to colonize the entire universe. 1. Low Earth orbit commercialization. A massive, interconnected web of hyper-advanced, modular space stations floating entirely in the silent, zero-gravity vacuum just 250 miles above the Earth's surface. This is the absolute first physical step in deep space colonization, the industrialization of low Earth orbit. We have already maintained a continuous human presence in orbit for decades, but the next phase replaces fragile scientific outposts with massive, privately funded commercial habitats. These enormous physical structures will serve as zero-gravity manufacturing plants, using the lack of physical gravity to print flawless, massive 3D organs, forge perfect fiber optic cables, and build enormous, delicate solar arrays that would violently collapse under Earth's gravity. It marks the first time humanity will live, work, and physically generate an economy entirely in the vacuum of space. But low Earth orbit is merely the shallow end of the cosmic pool. To truly expand, humanity must physically conquer our closest celestial neighbor. 2. The lunar orbital gateway. A heavily armored, physical toll booth floating in the pitch-black void of cislunar space, acting as the ultimate staging ground for deep solar system exploration. Rockets launching directly from Earth must burn an astronomical amount of chemical fuel just to fight the brute force of our planet's gravity. To solve this, humanity will build a massive, permanent orbital station around the moon. This gateway will act as a colossal physical shipyard and refueling depot. Instead of launching massive, heavy spacecraft from Earth in one piece, we will launch them in smaller, lightweight modules, physically assembling and fueling them in the zero-gravity environment of lunar orbit. This station is the absolute physical anchor holding our presence in deep space together, providing a safe, orbital bunker for astronauts before they prepare to launch a brutal physical descent down to the alien dirt below. 3. Permanent lunar surface bases. A cluster of heavily shielded, unyielding metal habitats sitting completely isolated in the eternal, freezing darkness of the moon's Shackleton crater. Establishing a permanent physical footprint on the lunar surface is a nightmare of engineering. The moon has absolutely no atmosphere to stop micrometeorites, and its surface is pounded relentlessly by lethal physical waves of solar radiation. To survive, the first lunar colonists will use autonomous robotic rovers to violently scoop up the abrasive microscopic lunar dirt, known as regolith, and 3D print massive, thick physical walls completely over their habitats. By building their bases inside the deep, permanently shadowed craters of the lunar South Pole, colonists will physically mine millions of tons of ancient, frozen water ice, breaking it down into breathable oxygen and explosive hydrogen rocket fuel. Surviving the moon proves we can live in the dark, but the next stage turns this frozen wasteland into a colossal physical machine. 4. Lunar industrialization and mass drivers. A violently active, sprawling industrial complex completely covering the lunar surface, continuously firing massive physical payloads of refined metal directly into the pitch-black sky. Once basic survival is established, the moon becomes the ultimate off-world mining quarry. Because the moon has only 1/6 of Earth's physical gravity and absolutely no atmospheric friction, it is the perfect place to build ships. Autonomous mining rigs will relentlessly strip mine the lunar crust for iron, titanium, and highly valuable helium-3. Instead of using rockets to launch these heavy materials, colonists will build massive magnetic railguns, known as mass drivers, physically stretching for miles across the lunar surface. These electromagnetic cannons will violently accelerate thousands of tons of refined metal and fuel directly into space, catching them in orbit to construct colossal deep space vessels. The moon will physically become humanity's primary factory, building the massive transport systems required to cross the terrifying voids between planets. 5. Interplanetary cyclers. A colossal, continuously moving artificial habitat, spinning violently in the dark to generate physical gravity, acting as an endless cosmic train system between Earth and Mars. Chemical rockets are far too small and physically agonizing for humans to endure during a 9-month journey to Mars. Instead, humanity will construct Aldrin Cyclers. These are gargantuan, armored cruise ships permanently locked in a massive elliptical physical orbit that continuously loops between Earth and Mars. Because they never stop to land, they never need to burn massive amounts of fuel to decelerate. Smaller, nimble taxi ships will aggressively launch from Earth, physically docking with the speeding cycler as it passes by. Inside, colonists will live in massive, spinning cylindrical centrifuges, using centrifugal force to physically simulate Earth's gravity, protecting their bones and muscles from painfully deteriorating in the zero-gravity void, preparing their bodies for the brutal reality of an entirely new planet. 6 Martian outposts. A deeply buried, heavily pressurized metallic bunker completely hidden beneath the freezing, toxic, rust-red surface of Mars. The physical reality of the first Martian colony is not a beautiful glass dome. It is an agonizing, claustrophobic fight for survival. Mars has an incredibly thin, utterly useless atmosphere, meaning lethal radiation constantly bombards the surface. To survive, the first colonists will physically drag their habitats deep underground into ancient, hollowed-out volcanic lava tubes. Here, beneath miles of solid rock, they will be entirely shielded from the violent, planet-wide dust storms that can completely blot out the sun for months. They will rely entirely on in situ resource utilization, forcefully extracting trace amounts of water from the freezing Martian soil and growing genetically modified crops under harsh, artificial violet lights. It is a terrifying, desperate existence. But this desperate underground survival is merely the foundation for the most ambitious physical engineering project in the history of our species. 7 Martian domed cities and paraterraforming. A sweeping, colossal network of incredibly thick, hyperpressurized glass and steel domes, physically covering deep Martian valleys and canyons. As the population on Mars explodes from hundreds to hundreds of thousands, humanity will outgrow the underground caves. They will construct gargantuan physical domes, trapping breathable air and warmth inside, while keeping the freezing, toxic vacuum of the Martian atmosphere out. This is known as paraterraforming, creating massive, isolated pockets of Earth-like conditions on an alien world. Inside these colossal domes, complete artificial ecosystems will thrive, with physical rivers, forests, and sprawling metallic cities. Meanwhile, massive automated factories outside the domes will begin violently pumping millions of tons of heavy greenhouse gases directly into the thin Martian sky, initiating the agonizingly slow, millennia-long physical process of artificially warming the entire planet. But Mars lacks the heavy, rare metals needed to sustain an exploding population, forcing humanity to look toward a chaotic ring of flying shrapnel. 8 Asteroid belt mining operations. A violent, heavily industrialized swarm of thousands of autonomous, robotic drones systematically tearing apart massive, floating mountains of solid iron and precious metals. Sitting between Mars and Jupiter is the asteroid belt, a chaotic graveyard of planetary debris containing enough physical wealth to instantly collapse Earth's economy. A single, solid asteroid like 16 Psyche contains enough physical platinum, gold, and iron to be worth quintillions of dollars. Human colonists will establish heavily armored base camps on the largest dwarf planets, like Ceres and Vesta. From there, they will launch relentless swarms of mining drones to physically capture smaller asteroids, wrapping them in massive reflective nets, and using focused solar mirrors to violently melt the ice and extract the precious metals. These floating rocks will be entirely hollowed out, their empty physical shells spun up to create artificial gravity, forming deep space outposts for the miners. But extracting metal is only part of the equation. Humanity will soon require a boundless supply of raw energy. 9 Callisto ice colonies. A massively fortified, brutally cold physical outpost entirely encased in a miles-thick shell of solid ice, sitting in the terrifying shadow of the largest planet in our solar system. Jupiter is a colossal monster of gas and gravity, possessing a magnetic field so unbelievably violent that it blasts its inner moons with completely lethal doses of physical radiation. For this reason, humanity will bypass the inner moons and settle on Callisto, the outermost physical moon of Jupiter. Callisto is geologically dead, meaning it provides a stable, heavily cratered surface of ancient ice. Colonists will physically drill deep down into the frozen crust, melting the ice to create massive subsurface water caverns where they will build heavily pressurized aquatic base camps. From this completely shielded icy fortress, humanity will harvest the limitless water supply, refining it into fuel to violently launch robotic ships deep into Jupiter's atmosphere to harvest rare atmospheric gases. While Callisto offers safety in the ice, the next stage of colonization offers an entire world of limitless fuel. 10 Titan hydrocarbon cities. A completely alien twilight world covered entirely in a thick, choking, orange smog, where massive physical lakes of liquid methane relentlessly wash against shores of frozen water ice. This is Titan, the largest moon of Saturn, and the only other physical body in the solar system with a thick, dense atmosphere. Because the atmosphere is incredibly thick, and the physical gravity is remarkably low, A human being wearing a specialized suit could strap artificial mechanical wings to their arms and physically fly through the dense orange sky by simply flapping their arms. The entire physical surface of Titan is drenched in hydrocarbons, the exact chemical compounds we use for fuel on Earth. Humanity will build massive, floating, balloon-like cities suspended high above the freezing methane lakes, forcefully pumping millions of gallons of liquid fuel directly into orbital refineries. Titan will become the absolute physical gas station of the outer solar system, powering our inevitable push into the darkest, most terrifying reaches of deep space. 11 Uit Cloudway Stations. A completely pitch-black, frozen, lonely outpost physically anchored to a dead, rogue comet sitting completely at the absolute edge of the Sun's gravitational reach. Beyond the orbit of Pluto lies the Uit Cloud, a massive spherical shell of ancient ice and rock. Out here, the physical light from our Sun is barely distinguishable from any other distant star in the void. There is absolutely no solar power. Colonists living in these extreme, isolated way stations will rely entirely on advanced, violent physical fusion reactors to generate heat and electricity. These outposts act as the final, absolute borders of human territory, heavily armed physical lighthouses warning incoming interstellar debris and serving as the ultimate launching pads for the most daring leap in human history. To go any further, humanity must physically detach itself from the Sun entirely and embrace the deep, endless dark. 12 Interstellar Generation Ships. A colossal, self-contained physical world completely enclosed inside a hollowed-out, miles-long metallic cylinder, coasting silently through the terrifyingly empty void between stars. Because the physical distance to the nearest star, Alpha Centauri, is over 4 light-years away, even the fastest theoretical fusion rockets will take centuries to make the journey. The original humans who board these massive ships will absolutely never physically see their destination. They will live, reproduce, and die completely inside the artificially lit, spinning metallic walls of the ship. These generation ships will contain entire physical ecosystems, with vast forests, rivers, and wildlife engineered to permanently sustain the closed-loop environment. It is a monumental physical gamble, a fragile seed of human biology completely isolated in a lethal vacuum, trusting that their great-grandchildren will be the ones to finally decelerate and forcefully insert themselves into the orbit of an entirely alien sun. 13 Exoplanet Colonization. A brutally stark, violently unfamiliar physical landscape, permanently illuminated by the eerie, deep crimson glow of a violently flaring red dwarf star. Arriving at an exoplanet like Proxima b will not be a peaceful landing. It will be a violent physical shock to human biology. The planet is likely tidally locked, meaning one physical side permanently faces the scorching star, while the other side is locked in an eternal, freezing physical night. Humanity will be forced to land completely in the Terminator line, the incredibly narrow, shadowy physical border between extreme heat and absolute freezing death. The alien soil will be completely sterile, completely devoid of the microscopic bacteria required to grow food. Colonists will have to forcefully inject engineered Earth bacteria into the dirt, slowly and painstakingly terraforming a completely alien geology to accept human agriculture. But as our population physically spreads across multiple star systems, our demand for energy will completely outpace what any single planet can provide. 14 Stellar Megastructures, the Dyson Swarm. A colossal, blindingly bright mechanical web of millions of highly reflective physical solar sails, completely engulfing and encapsulating an entire living star. To fuel a civilization that physically spans multiple star systems, humanity will ascend to a Type II civilization on the Kardashev Scale, meaning we command the total physical energy output of an entire sun. To achieve this, we will systematically strip mine and entirely dismantle completely dead planets, using mass drivers to violently launch billions of tons of refined metal into orbit around a star. We will physically construct a Dyson Swarm, a dense, chaotic cloud of millions of independent orbital mirrors that relentlessly catch the violent, physical radiation of the star and beam the pure energy directly back to heavily populated worlds. The star itself will physically dim from the outside, trapped entirely inside a cage of human engineering, providing limitless energy to fuel the ultimate stage of our cosmic evolution. 15 Black Hole Harnessing and Galactic Empire. A hyper-advanced, physically indestructible ring of massive metallic superstructures violently spinning just inches above the pitch-black event horizon of a supermassive black hole. As humanity ascends to a Type III civilization, expanding physically across the entire Milky Way galaxy, stars will no longer provide enough energy. We will forcefully approach the most violent, destructive physical anomalies in the universe, rotating black holes. By utilizing the Penrose Process, humanity will relentlessly fire massive physical payloads of matter directly into the black hole's ergosphere, the localized region where spacetime itself is violently dragged and stretched. By physically sacrificing a portion of the matter to the void, The remaining matter will be violently ejected at near light speed, completely saturated with stolen rotational energy. We will physically harvest the absolute most destructive forces in reality, entirely mastering the manipulation of spacetime, gravity, and energy. Humanity will transition from a fragile, terrified biological species bound to Earth to the absolute, undisputed architects of the physical universe.